legacy, the land that we steward, and the values that bring us together here in this beautiful CoBank Arena. At this time, please rise and remove your hats and join us in honoring our country as we welcome the presentation of our national anthem being sung by a fellow Highland breeder, Miss Karis Lunn of Hanover, Pennsylvania.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I'd like to welcome our spectators online and as well as ringside. This is going to be Class 901. These are Sovereign Prospect Heifers. For your Sovereign Heifers and Market Show here for the National Western Stock Show's ACA National Show for the 37th annual running. Within this class, we'll have entries 4893 coming from Wyoming Heritage Highlands of Sheridan, Wyoming. 4894 will come from Wakarusa Cattle Company of Eudora, Kansas. And I believe that is going to make our class. Our judge for today's contest is none other than Dr. Blake Bloomberg. He had the honor of selecting our grand champion junior market steer last night. Dr. Bloomberg is a professor and lead livestock judging coach at Blackhawk College in the East Campus. We appreciate Dr. Bloomberg taking the time to evaluate our Highlands here at the National Western. It also looks like we did bring in the entry from Class 902 of Sovereign Heifers that were born in 2024. We have entry 4895 coming from 7B Cattle Company of Cookeville, Tennessee.
Well, good morning, and certainly a privilege to be back with you here again on the second day of a back-to-back for me. And we just had the two classes here in this division, and we'll keep a pretty steady pace. I know some people need to get kind of rolling here to beat the weather, and so we'll keep a pretty good brisk pace here this morning and get through these pair of calves up here in the front represent a class, and then young man's here in the back is a single entry. So we'll talk about each one of them, then get you a grain of reserve here in this division. Heifer up in the front, you really like her balance and her femininity and her attractiveness. Really got a nice look to her as you study her from the profile. And then again, as you set her in motion, a heifer that gets out and covers her track well. I like the angle of her shoulder. Built with some stoutness as you take her to the ground in terms of her foot and her bone. I think a quality heifer there up in the front of the lineup. The black heifer in the middle, again, kind of the same type of cattle from the side in terms of her refinement and her look and her extension. Really clean in terms of her front end and sets her neck up nice at the top of her shoulder. I don't think she's built quite as stout as the heifer right in front of her in terms of her underpinning and her width and her dimension, but still a quality heifer in terms of her femininity and her attractiveness. The single entry here that the young man has, a big-bodied, easy-keeping kind of a female. A lot of utility as you study her in the middle part of her body. Still a very flexible heifer from a structure standpoint. Gets out and covers her track well. Probably just a little plainer from the profile in relation to the other two. Probably just not quite as unique in terms of her look, but very fundamentally correct from a brood cow standpoint. So a nice trio of heifers here in this division. We're going to use the heifer up in the front to lead off, and the heifer right behind her will be our reserve in this division. Let's give them a nice hand as they start off here. Good way to start off our show.
Your results for Class 901. Second place was 4894 from Wakarusa Cattle Company. First place was 4893 from Wyoming Heritage Highlands. And also results from Class 902. First place was 4895 from 7B Cattle. And your results coming in from your division, your Sovereign Heifer Grand Champion was entry 4893 from Wyoming Heritage Highlands of Sheridan, Wyoming. They receive a Grand Champion banner sponsored by Wyoming Heritage Highlands. Your reserve champion came out of Class 901. That was 4894 from Wakarusa Cattle Company of Eudora, Kansas. They will receive a reserve champion banner sponsored by Hyde Park Farm. Congratulations to our division winners. Now stepping into the ring is going to be class 903. These are full-blood prospect Highlands born in 2025. Within this class, we'll have 2 entries. 4896 comes from Lone Pine Livestock. And the other entry would be entry 4897 from Husker Show Cattle. Those are your 2 entries that make up class 903. Class 903 will be the only class in the division. So our judge, Mr. Dr. Blake Bloomberg, will select your first and seconds as your Grand and Reserve Grand Champion full-blood prospects. Your Grand Champion full-blood prospect will receive a banner sponsored by Rockhouse Run Farm. The Reserve Grand Champion banner will be sponsored by Glory Oaks Farm. We appreciate our sponsors here for the National Western and the ACA shows.
Nice pair of these prospect steers here, and I think both of them offer some good things, and there's some trade-offs between the two. The lighter colored steer here is one that you really like in terms of his top line balance, strong in terms of his underpinning, and a calf that's really heavy structured. You like him when he gets out and goes. I don't know that he's quite as dense in terms of his muscle shape as what we have in the steer right behind him. Probably doesn't tie quite as high on the front side of his shoulder, but I like the calf in terms of his foot and his bone work. He's got some substance as you take him to the ground. The red steer's very attractive from the profile. He sets his neck up nice at the top of his shoulder, and he's got a neat look in terms of his balance and presence. He moves with some comfortability off both ends, and he has some organization to his skeleton. He probably is just a shade thicker than the calf right in front of him in terms of his body shape and his pin width. So I think there's some trade-offs between these two. It's a nice pair of calves. I think both have a lot of promising future to them. We're going to use the red steer to be our champion. The yellow steer will be reserved. Let's give these 2 exhibitors a nice round of applause on a good pair.
Results for Class 903, second place, and your Reserve Grand Champion, full-blood prospect, is going to come 4896 from Lone Pine Livestock. And your Grand Champion and first place for Class 903 was entry 4897 from Husker Show Cattle of York, Nebraska. Congratulations to Class 903 as well as our Grand and Reserve Grand Champion full-blood prospects. At this time now, we'll move on to Class 904. Class 904 will be crossbred prospects, 50% Highland or more, born in 2025. Within this class, we will have 3 entries. 4899 comes from Big Dreams Ranch of Yakima, Washington. Entry 4900 comes from Big Dreams Ranch of Yakima, Washington. And rounding out your class is 4901. That comes from Gordon's Fold of Evergreen, Colorado. That is a complete class. That is also the only class in the division of crossbred prospects. So first and second within Class 904 will become your Grand and Reserve Grand Champions. Your Grand Champion will receive a banner sponsored by Runamuck Ranches. The Reserve Grand Champion will receive a banner sponsored by Uncle Dave.
Interesting trio of steers here, and I think some differences between the three, and you could toss them back and forth, maybe just if you wanted to set your priorities in a different place than me. But the orange calf, in terms of his symmetry and his balance and the quality of his line, I think elevates him to the top. He's a calf that, and just in terms of having some robust body shape, still with enough stoutness and enough look, I think is the one you need to tie to go ahead and win this particular class. Steer that comes in second, you like him in the middle part of his body, very easy feed and look to this particular calf, and one that I like his depth and softness. Closes up a little more in his knee and in his chest floor. Doesn't have quite as much thickness as you get around behind him compared to our calf that wins the class, but he's a little more moderate. He's a little softer made than our steer that comes in third. There is a little more stretch and length in this calf in third. He's a little more elevated from the profile. I like this calf when he gets out and moves. He's the most closed up, though, of our initial trio here. He wants to get just a little tucked up from his forerib back into his flank and didn't maintain his body balance quite as nicely when we set him in motion. Nice trio of steers. Congratulations, those kids.
Results for Class 904 of your crossbred prospects. Third place, 4,900 from Big Dreams Ranch. Second place, and your reserve grand champion crossbred prospect was entry 4901, coming from Gordon's Fold of Evergreen, Colorado. And your Class 904 winner, first place, and your grand champion crossbred prospect was 48.99 from Big Dreams Ranch of Yakima, Washington. Congratulations to our division winners. We will now bring in the ring Class 905. These will be full-blood feeders born December 31st of 2024 or prior. Within this class, we'll have the two entries. 4902 comes from Runamuck Ranches of Yakima, Washington, and 4903 comes from Cross Creek Springs of Wetmore, Colorado. Class 905 is going to be the only class in the division, so your judge, Dr. Blake Bloomberg, will select these individuals as your grand and reserve grand champions of the full-blood feeder division. Your grand champion will receive a banner sponsored by Northeast Highland Cattle Association. The reserve grand champion banner is sponsored by Highland on the Hill Farm.
Another nice pair of steers here to come in our next class. We use the steer in the back, though, to lead off and be our champion here in this division. I just really like his balance. He's really got a nice look as you study him from the side, and then you get in and climb on the cattle. He's got more width and spread up high. He's a little fuller from his hooks back to his pins, down and through his quarter. He's a little square in the way that he handles his hock, and he's a big bone, stout-featured rascal that still has some athleticism on the go. Nice calf in second as well, one that's got a similar look from the side. He's very attractive up through his front end. Probably not quite as opened up in his body shape and out through his hip as the steer that ends up being our class winner and our champion in this division. Need to square him up in his hock just a bit, but still another quality individual. Congratulations to those two. Good pair.
Results for Class 905 of full-blood feeders. Second place and your reserve grand champion full-blood feeder is entry 4902 from Runamuck Ranches of Yakima, Washington. Your class winner and your grand champion full-blood feeder was entry 4903 from Cross Creek Springs of Wetmore, Colorado. Congratulations to our division winners. We will now move on to Class 906. These are crossbred feeders, 50% Highland or more, born December 31st of 2024 or prior. We have a single entry that's in this class. This will be entry 4906, coming from Clearwater Spring Highlands of Brighton, Colorado. This is the only entry in the class, the only class in the division. So first within Class 906 will become your champion crossbred feeder. Your grand champion will receive a banner sponsored by Rocking T Highlands.
Just a single entry here, the skunk-tailed calf, one that really has a lot of balance to him. He's got some strength in his top line and some levelness out of his hip. He's kind of about to work this young man over a little bit here, but I like his structural integrity. I like his flexibility. We'll get him out here with some other cattle, or get him. He just needs to relax a little bit, but nice calf. Let's give him a nice round of applause.
Results for Class 906 of crossbred feeders. First place and your grand champion in crossbred feeder was 4906 from Clearwater Spring, Highlands. Congratulations to our division winner. We will now move on to Class 907. Class 907 will be full-blood markets born August 1st of 2023 or later. Within Class 907, we should have 2 entries. 4908 will come from Wakarusa Cattle Company of Eudora, Kansas, and 4909 will come from Cross Cattle Company of Kinderdale, Pennsylvania. This is the only 2 entries in the class and your only class in the division. So therefore, first and second in this class will become your grand and reserve grand champion full-blood markets. Your grand champion will receive a banner sponsored by Mid-Atlantic Highland Association. The reserve will receive a banner sponsored by Golden Hour Farms.
I've never judged so many divisions of different steers in one breed in my life, but these 2 here are really nice, and 2 of the nicer cattle that we've seen thus far through the ring, just in terms of presence and balance. And the red one that we're going to use to lead off this class, I really love his length and his extension from the side. Set these cattle in motion. He's very correct in terms of his hip and his hind leg posture. He's good in the slope of an angle of his shoulder. Really strong down his top line. Again, I'm not telling you he's the thickest, widest calf that we might see all day, but he's sure ample in that regard. Just a really well-presented, well-balanced steer that really is kind of a knockout from the side. The chocolate calf that comes second here, maybe a little more dimensional as you get up on top of the cattle, a little broader out of his back and out of his hip, and he's stout to the ground. He doesn't handle his top line quite as good as our steer that wins, nor is he quite as elevated up through his front end. But still, when you like the structural stoutness that he has, he's got some width and dimension when you get up on top of the cattle as well. So a very nice pair. Let's give those exhibitors a good round of applause as they head back.
Results for Class 907 of your full-blood markets. Second place and your reserve grand champion full-blood market was entry 4909 from Cross Cattle Company. First place and your grand champion full-blood market was 4908 coming from Wakarusa Cattle Company. Congratulations to our division winners. We'll now move on to our next class, which we're going to make Class 908. This will be crossbred markets. We'll have a single entry that's in this class. This will be 4907 from TRM Nico. This will be from Imperial Hills Livestock of Kiowa, Colorado.
Another single entry here, but still a quality individual. Again, they maybe don't want to cooperate quite as well with only one out here, but you can see he's pretty athletic as he's kind of riding her around here. But I like his flexibility. I like his reach off both ends. Calf's still got a pretty nice presence to him from the side when he gets hooked up there. He's got big feet underneath of him and heavy bone. One that's got ample amount of width and substance as you get behind him as well. So she's doing a good job there. You get turned around and you can see some other cattle show himself off a little bit. But let's give her a good round of applause here, a single entry in this class.
Results coming in for Class 908 of your crossbred markets. First place and your grand champion crossbred market was 4907. Coming from Imperial Hills Livestock of Kiowa, Colorado. They will receive a banner sponsored by Wakefield Farms. Congratulations to our division winner. In the ring at this time now is going to be our junior show. This is Class 101 of heifer calves, born May 1st through December 31st of 2025. Within this class, we'll have 6 total entries. Those entries include 1821 from Bailey Heydrich of Yakima, Washington. 1822 comes from Cameron Cardin of Sheridan, Wyoming. 1823 comes from Clara Wallace of Vandalia, Missouri. 1824 will come from Macy Lunn of Hanover, Pennsylvania. 1825 will come from Cannon Hansen of Elizabeth, Colorado. And 1826 will come from Jillian Lockwood of Hobbs, New Mexico. That is your complete class of 101.
Very competitive class of heifer calves here to start off in our first class here. You can bring her around, young lady. This is a nice pair of heifers up on the front end, and I think they kind of sort themselves up, and then we've got a nice group of heifers here to come behind them. But this one from the side really gives you a unique look. She's very up-headed and very attractive and very feminine in her design. Just so good in terms of her length and her extension. Yet the right kind of condition to me for a heifer calf. Looks like she's got some continuation as well. You could square her up in her hock, and that's where I think the heifer in second has an advantage. But this one's highly presented, very capably shown. I think a very good heifer here to win the class. A little shorter bodied, maybe a little boxier made heifer to come in second. Really like her midrib and like her flank. I like the turn to the upper part of her skeleton. We alluded there that she is a little squarer in her hock than the heifer that ends up winning our class. She's a little shorter out of her hip, though. Probably doesn't maybe just utilize her hind leg quite as comfortably as what the heifer we have that wins the class does, but another very good heifer there in second. Maybe as much weight per day of age as any of the cattle here comes in third. I like her length of body. She's very feminine, very refined in her shoulder. When you get in behind the cattle, she's not as good in her body shape, not as much turn and spring to the upper portion of her rib cage as what we find in the top 2 heifers in this class, but still a very, very nice silhouette to this female. Young lady does a very good job getting her presented. A real bulky made, dense kind of a heifer to come in fourth. I like her thickness. I like her substance. This doesn't have quite as much attractiveness to her as the cattle that precede her in the class. The red heifer that comes out next, the red roan, very stout featured female, a lot like the heifer right here. She's got something to her in terms of body and mass, just maybe doesn't hook up quite as correctly from the profile. Heifer that closed the class, again, a little nicer up front, probably just a little freer of condition as you study her down and through her chest. With that, though, she's probably the most closed up heifer we've got in the group and doesn't balance up quite as well from the profile. Good set of heifers here to start off our show.
Results for Class 101 of heifer calves. 6th, 1824 from Macy Lunn. 5th place, 1821 from Bailey Heydrich. 4th place, 1825 from Cannon Hansen. 3rd, 1826 from Jillian Lockwood. 2nd, 1822 from Cameron Cardin. And your class winner was 1823 from Clara Wallace. Congratulations to Class 101. Now stepping into the ring is going to be Class 102A of heifer calves born of March 16th of 2025 through April 30th of 2025. In this class, we'll have entries 1827 from Ty Miller of Woodbine, Iowa. 1828 comes from Tinley Caskey of Pipestone, Minnesota. 1829 will come from Gracie Dalton of Waddell, Arizona. 1831 will come from Macy Anderson of Sawyer, North Dakota. 1832 will come from Addison Fitzsimmons of Canyon Creek, Montana. 1834 will come from Chloe Wallace of Vandalia, Missouri. And rounding out your class is going to be 1835 from Renly Silva of Greeley, Colorado. That is your complete class of 102A.
Other competitive class of females here, and the heifer that wins the class kind of dominates to me in terms of power and balance and substance. Really a structurally correct heifer that gets out and covers her track well, yet she's got something to her as you get up on top of the cattle. She's got some internal dimension and some stoutness to her. Very correctly balanced, very ladylike in terms of the way that she's designed. I think a nice female here to lead off the class. There's some things to like about the heifer in second as well. A very proportional female in terms of her look from the side. She's really good in terms of her midrib back into her flank. I didn't read her being quite as correct on her rear skeleton as what we found in the heifer that ends up winning our class, but still a very useful kind of a female here to get the red ribbon. The heifer that comes in third, again, a very powerful heifer, really opened up in terms of her body and her spread. She, too, is very good in her top line. I didn't think this heifer got off of her hind leg with quite the squareness that we found in our top two. Just need to square up a little bit from her hock down to the ground, and she'll play out to her base, but still a good heifer from the profile. I like the black heifer, and just in terms of her width at the ground, she is a little square in her hock and really has a mobile running gear to her. She wants to get up in her back just a little bit and not as good in her underline from her forerib back into her flank, but I thought the heifers in third and four, you could switch maybe if you wanted to. I like the look of this next heifer, very attractive, probably the most juvenile heifer in the class, just in terms of her refinement and her femininity, very green from a condition standpoint. She just gets out-horsed a little bit comparatively. That hasn't captured as much weight per day of age as the other cattle in this particular group, but still a very solid heifer that I think has a bright future. I love the skeleton of the next heifer. You want to talk about just the way one should move from the side, her bend and give to her hind leg, the slope and angle of her shoulder. When you get up on top of them, though, she's probably one of the more disappointing cattle in terms of just genuine width and stoutness, but I really like the way that heifer gets out and travels, and very feminine. The heifer that closed the class, I like her extra stoutness. She's got some punch as you get up on top of her, a little rounder out of her hip, a little more tucked up in her forerib and flank. Just didn't have quite the balance and symmetry to her line as some of the other cattle in the class. Good group of females here in Class 2.
Results for Class 102A of your heifer calves. 7th, 1831 from Macy Anderson. 6th, 1828 from Tinley Caskey. 5th, 1829 from Gracie Dalton. 4th, 1827 from Ty Miller. 3rd, 1835 from Renly Silva. 2nd, 1832 from Addison Fitzsimmons. And your Class 102A winner was 1834 from Chloe Wallace. Congratulations to Class 102A. In the ring at this time now is going to be Class 102B of heifer calves born January 1st through March 15th of 2025. Within this class, we'll have entries 1837 from Jasmine Brown of Pleasant Town, Nebraska. 1840 comes from Easton Silva of Greeley, Colorado. 1841 will come from Clara Wallace of Vandalia, Missouri. 1842 from Jasmine Brown of Pleasanton, Nebraska. 1843 comes from Savannah Farrell of South Yarmouth, Massachusetts. 1844 will come from Madison Minor of Cookeville, Tennessee. And rounding out your class will be 1845 from Chloe Foster of Deanna, Texas. Those are your entries that complete Class 102B.
Another very competitive class here in our Highland show, and the red heifer that leads off, I think, does so pretty comfortably for me, just in terms of her eye appeal and her substance. A female that's really well balanced and very attractive as you study her in terms of her look. Got a good sweeping rib cage underneath of her and still nice down her top. Her underpinning is good. She's long and level out of her hip. She gets out and grabs the ground right and then strikes a good pose from the side. So a nice heifer here to lead off the class. The heifer, the smoky colored heifer to come next. Again, very dense. You like the extra substance that she has as well as you take her to the ground. Not as good from her length from hooks to pins. Not as stout as you take her down to the ground from her pins down is what we find in the heifer that wins. But still one that you like in terms of being roomy, middled, a big body kind of a heifer that's got some volume to her. The heifer that comes in third, very attractive. I really like the look she has up through her front end, really neat, and I really like the presence. This heifer just needs more to her in relation to the top pair of cattle in terms of being opened up in her body. Just need a little more spring of rib and capacity to her, but a really neat silhouette, maybe as high tying as any cattle that we've seen thus far. The next heifer really opened up as you get in behind her, a wide-hipped heifer that's got some upper rib cage to her, like that about her. Consequently, though, with her extra stoutness, she gets a little tip forward in her shoulder, doesn't stay as good in her top line, and we need to make her just a little more limber. On the standstill, I can move the yellow heifer up a spot or two. When we set her in motion, though, she wants to drop her hip and cut up at her flank. I think that causes that heifer to just kind of fall out of balance. When she stands still, though, she can really strike a nice look from the side. I like her levelness down her top. This heifer just needs a little more time, but I like this heifer just in terms of her basic build and her look from the side. We just need to drop her down in her rear rib and flank, just make her a little broodier in the middle part of her body. Heifer that closed the class is very cowy. She does have a little more utility in terms of her midsection. She just a little plainer from the profile in relation to her contemporaries in this very competitive class.
Results for Class 102B. 7th place, 1844, from Madison Minor. 6th place, 1842, from Jasmine Brown. 5th place, 1845, from Chloe Foster. 4th, 1840, from Easton Silva. 3rd, 1843, from Savannah Farrell. 2nd was 1841, from Clara Wallace. And your class winner was 1837, from Jasmine Brown. Congratulations to Class 102B. Now moving about the ring is going to be Class 103 of junior yearling Highland heifers born July 1st through December 31st of 2024. Within this class, we'll have entries 1846 from Emily Moore of Bloomfield, Indiana. 1847 will come from Madison Minear of Cookeville, Tennessee. 1849 will come from Karis Lunn of Hanover, Pennsylvania. And 1851 rounds out your class from Peyton McCaig of Eudora, Kansas. Those are your entries that make up Class 103. That is your complete class.
a fairly overwhelming heifer here that leads off this class. Just really unique in terms of her presence, and then to have that much capacity and volume to her. And she's really good on her feet and legs. Really well presented heifer. You just love her femininity, but yet still has some body shape and some mass and some spring of rib to her. One that's just spot on from a presentation perspective as well. Just a really nice heifer there to lead off the class. I like this black heifer too. She's one that's stout. Again, really well presented female that's really nice up through her front end. Just doesn't have quite as much to her as our heifer that ends up leading off the class from a body and a mass standpoint, but still a very quality individual. The red heifer to come in third, a really moderate, sensibly sized kind of a female. A lot of capacity and volume to her. Just probably doesn't have the extras of the top two cattle from a look and a presence standpoint, but still one that's very functional, very low to the ground, going to be relatively easy, I think, to keep herself into production. And then the heifer that closed the class, another good cattle from a structure standpoint, gets out and covers her track well. She too has some doability, just maybe not quite the extras in terms of that aesthetic look that we find in some of the cattle that precede her in the class, but still a real useful kind of a female in her own right. Good class.
Results for Class 103 of your junior yearling Highland heifers. Fourth place was 1849 from Karis Lund. Third, 1847 from Madison Minear. Second was 1851 from Peyton McCaig. And your class winner was 1846 from Emily Moore. Congratulations to Class 103. Now stepping into the ring is going to be Class 104A of yearling Highland heifers born April 1st through June 30th of 2024. And this class will have entries 1854 from Stacy Patton of Frederick, Colorado, 1855 from Keegan Weimer of Cole Harbor, North Dakota, 1856 from Madison Minear of Cookeville, Tennessee, 1857 comes from Quinn Keller of Crestline, Ohio, 1858 will come from Joseph Burton of Cookeville, Tennessee. Also in the class is 1859 from Quinn Keller of Crestline, Ohio. 1860 will come from Bella Weimer of Cole Harbor, North Dakota. 1861 will come from Gabe Shreesky of Max, North Dakota. 1862 will come from Stacy Patton of Frederick, Colorado. 1863 will come from Breslin DeLong of Fremont, Indiana. 1864 will come from Jillian Lockwood of Hobbs, New Mexico. And rounding out your class is 1865 from Brianna Brown of Pleasanton, Nebraska. Those are your entries that make up Class 104A. That is your complete class.
Another very competitive class here in our Highland show, and I thought this top pair kind of got themselves really the top three heifers. You can bring that lighter colored heifer around there in third as well. I thought these three, you kind of pluck them off and then you look at them, and this heifer that wins the class is not maybe wanting to show herself off quite as well out here. She's kind of like a pig on roller skates at times, just wanting to jump around and kind of slide around. But when she does, this heifer settles in. I think her build is the best. She's got a lot of presence to her and attractiveness. I like her structural stoutness. And I think she's just a little better in terms of her agility off of her hind leg than the heifer that comes in second. She too's built a little nicer up and through her front end. Maybe not wanting to extenuate that out here quite as good with her attitude, but there's a lot of good in that heifer there that wins the class. I like the heifer in second as well. She's tremendously stout, really opened up from a dimension standpoint. You like the turn of her mid-body and back in her rear rib and flank. Really stout-featured, big-footed kind of a female as well. I thought she was just a little crustier at the top of her neck. Wasn't maybe quite as feminine as what we found in the heifer that leads off, but that's a good pair of cattle there up on the front end. You don't move them. I think this heifer becomes a major player in terms of her look and her eye appeal. I think she's actually the combination of the other two in terms of the way that she blends some things together. It's when we set the cattle in motion that she drives herself into third for me. She's just too tight stepping off either end of her framework. She's a little smaller footed kind of a female that's not built with quite as much endurance from a movement standpoint. But again, you turn it into a standing still contest, and I think she gets right up in the mix. She's a very good heifer as well. I'd just like to loosen her up a bit in terms of her construction. The heifer that comes out next, a real long-bodied female. She wants to get up in her back just a little bit, and I didn't think handled herself quite as comfortably on the go. But on the standstill, again, that heifer gives you a nice look. It's when you pull them into motion where she just wants to get up in her spine and just kind of falls out of balance just a little bit. The next heifer, really like her athleticism. You want to swap that pair and say, hey, this one's sounder. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But for me, this heifer, when you get up on top of her, though, is just built a little too flat and a little too narrow. I didn't read her having quite as much internal dimension and width from end to end. Next heifer's a real moderate, easy-keeping kind of a female, a little chuffier up and through her front end and just a little more conservative and slack in her frame. But you do have to be impressed with that heifer when you get around behind her. She's opened up in her body shape. Maybe a little more performance here in the next two cattle. I thought this one had just maybe a little tidier look than the heifer right behind her. Probably just, to me, to get her up, when you get around behind her, we need to widen her up in her pin set. This heifer's got just a little more performance like we talked, a little plainer in terms of her condition. We just want to peel just a little condition off that particular heifer. We close out with three good cattle here, and strong in her lines. This heifer just needs a little more to her, but I like her athleticism. This heifer is a little bulkier and denser. She gets up in her back and maybe just doesn't handle herself on the go quite as well. And our heifer that closed, really fresh from a composition standpoint. I like the fact that she's still pretty juvenile in terms of her condition. We just need to see a little more of that heifer for me to get her up off the end of this class.
Results coming out of Class 104A. 10th place was 1855 from Keegan Weimer. 9th place, 1856 from Madison Manier. 8th place was 1861 from Gabe Shresky. 7th was 1859 from Quinn Keller. 6th place was 1858 from Joseph Burton. 5th place was 1863 from Breslin DeLong. 4th place was 1857 from Quinn Keller. 3rd place was 1864 from Jillian Lockwood. 2nd was 1865 from Brianna Brown. And your class winner was 1862 from Stacy Patton. Congratulations to our Class 104A exhibitors. In the ring now is going to be Class 104B of yearling heifers born January 1st through March 31st of 2024. This class will have entries 1866 from Tate Page, 1867 from Brianna Brown, 1868 from Ashlyn Morelli, 1869 from Mason Grimes, 1870 from Leighton DeMuth, 1871 from Claire Grimes, 1872 from Hannah Norris, 1874 from Chloe Wallace, 1875 from Cooper Burton, 1876 comes from Ty Miller, 1877 from Tristan Carmack, 1878 from Gracie Dalton, and rounding out your class was 1879 from Nicolette Schmidt. Those are your entries that complete Class 104B.
every shape, size, kind in this class. I think it makes it a little tougher to put together. And for whatever reason, the cattle are maybe just a little stirred up this morning. So I think as you got to read through that and you look at them and you decide where you want to be. I thought these two matched up the best. And not that they always have to do that, because to me, I think good ones come in different shapes and sizes and kinds. But as you start to weigh down the totals, I think this heifer offers us the most totals, other than maybe her attitude. Her stoutness a feature, her substance at the ground. That heifer's got the most balance and collection, I think, as you study her from the profile as well. And as you start melding them down and sifting them off based on things that maybe you want to tweak on, I thought she had the least things that I wanted to change. I would lengthen her stride just a bit. I don't read it to be a problem. I think part of it is she's just wanting to fight the halter so bad today. That heifer's built good from a squareness standpoint. Her feet are good. I think she's just the most attractive one we have in the group that puts together the most good things. Heifer that's the most like her comes in second from a bone and a mass standpoint. Still really feminine in the way she's made up through her front end. Gets a little higher in her top and doesn't travel quite as comfortably off of her rear leg as the heifer we have that ends up winning our class. But it's still, I think as you weigh the totals out and you start trying to sort things out, she's the one that ends up being my second favorite. There's things I really like about the heifer in third, and just be honest with you, where's she at from a size and a weight per day of age standpoint? She's very moderate. You know, you want a moderate. She fits that bill. I didn't think she had quite as much stoutness to her in terms of her foot and her bone. She's made really good from the side. Probably one of the smaller heifers we've got in the group. And again, probably doesn't dictate a lot for me, but just as we talk the differences, I just need to see a little more stoutness in that particular heifer to get her up. This one was hard to know what to do with. I like her body. Her depth of body is good. She's still feminine up through her front end, and she is a little higher performing heifer. It's when I got in right behind them. She's narrow in her pin set. We got to square her up from hock to ground and make her more genuine at her base. Heifer that comes out next, a big-bodied, easy-keeping kind of a female, just maybe a little plainer in terms of her look. Do like her structural integrity. Heifer that comes out next, again, standing still, I really like her. She's big-footed, she's heavy-boned, she's got a nice look. Set her in motion, she wants to get weak in her loin and cut up in her flank, and I didn't think her body balance just stayed quite good enough to get her up. A good pair of cattle to come out next, both moderate, easy-keeping kind of females. Both of them just need a little more to them, though, from a stoutness perspective and internal dimension to get them up. And then we get down the line here, still some good cattle, a real stout, chocolate-colored heifer there. We just need to stretch her out up front. Close out with 4 really good cattle that are functional in terms of their feet and legs. They maybe just don't have some of the extra bells and whistles of the cattle that precede them in the class. Good set of females, but challenging to put together.
Results for Class 104B. 13th, 1879 from Nicolette Schmitz. 12th was 1869 from Mason Grimes. 11th, 1876 from Ty Miller. 10th, 1872 from Hannah Norris. 9th, 1866 from Tate Pape. 8th was 1877 from Tristan Carmack. 7th, 1878 from Gracie Dalton. 6th, 1874 from Chloe Wallace. 5th, 1867 from Brianna Brown. 4th, 1871 from Claire Grimes. 3rd, 1875 from Cooper Burton. 2nd, 1870 from Leighton DeMuth. And your class winner was 1868 from Ashlyn Morelli. Congratulations to our entries for Class 104B. That sets us up now for Class 105. Class 105 will be senior heifers born May 1st through December 31st of 2023. Now stepping in the ring is Class 105. Again, these are senior Highland heifers born May 1st through December 31st of 2023. This class will have entries 1880 from Breslin DeLong of Fremont, Indiana. 1881 will come from Ashlyn Morelli of Elverson, Pennsylvania. 1883 will come from Jennison DeLong of Fremont, Indiana. And rounding out your class will be entry 1884 from Peyton Bear of Rehide, South Dakota. Those are your entries that make up Class 105. Class 105 is complete.
Good class here again, and another one I think comes together fairly logically for me. The black heifer that wins the class really has a nice look as you study her from the profile. Very fresh and very feminine and very attractive up through her front end. Really gets out and moves with some comfortability off both ends of her skeleton. I'm not telling you she's the most powerful one we've seen, but just I think it all fits together really nicely on that heifer. She's been managed really well from a condition standpoint, starting to shake down some nice udder as well. Big stout female to come in second, a little tip forward in her shoulder. I didn't read the angle of her shoulder being quite as good as the heifer that ends up winning our class. But boy, she's got a unique look to her from the side. Really a lot of horsepower in that particular heifer as you get up on top of her. The yellow heifer to come in third, again, another one standing still I like. One that's got a great look to her from the profile. It's when we set the cattle in motion, she gets a little more tentative in the way that she travels off both ends of her skeleton, a little straighter up and through her shoulder, but still a real quality female when she's parked. Heifer that closed the class, one of the real nice ones we've had on the end today, a real big-bodied, easy-keeping kind of a female with a lot of volume. This young lady's done a good job. This heifer's a little cantankerous today, but still a real quality heifer. Just breaks in her loin, a little plainer from the profile, but still a real good grouping here in this class.
Your results for Class 105 of Senior Highland Heifers. Fourth place, 1880 from Breslin DeLong. Third place was 1883 from Jennison DeLong. Second was 1881 from Ashlyn Morelli. And your class winner was 1884 from Peyton Bear. Congratulations to Class 105. We'll now move on to Class 106. These will be senior heifers born January 1st through April 30th of 2023. Class 106 has two entries. 1886 comes from Ashlyn Morelli of Elverson, Pennsylvania. And 1887 comes from Renly Silva of Greeley, Colorado. Those are your two entries that make up Class 106. Class 106 is complete. And Class 106 is our last class before our grand drive.
Nice pair of heifers here to close out our show, and I think both of them really useful kind of cattle, but the black heifer to me is just a little more comfortable in her top line and the way that she grabs the ground from behind, a little more release to her pastern, and just a little more stability there, a big-bodied, big ribbed kind of a heifer that's got a lot of volume, has been managed very well from a condition standpoint. Real nice heifer there to lead off the class. A lot of look in the red heifer to come in second, one that again is very powerful as you get up on top of her in terms of the turn of her upper body and the spread out of her hip. She gets up at her top line and doesn't handle herself quite as comfortably at the ground, not as big in her rear foot and step as what we find in the heifer that ends up winning this class. But two very good cattle here to close out what's been a great show.
Results for Class 106 of senior heifers, second place, 1886 from Ashlyn Morelli. And your class winner was 1887 from Ridley Silva. Congratulations to Class 106. At this time, we'll now work on bringing back our first and second place entries from their respective classes for your judge to now select your champion and reserve champion junior breeding heifer. Stepping into the ring now is going to be our first place entries. From Class 101, first place, 1823 from Clara Wallace. From Class 102A, first place, 1834 from Chloe Wallace. From Class 102B, first place, 1837 from Jasmine Brown. From Class 103, first place, 1846 from Emily Moore. Coming out of Class 104A, first place, 1862 from Stacy Patton. From Class 104B, first place, 1868 from Ashlyn Morelli. From Class 105, first place, 1884 from Peyton Bear. And from Class 106, first place, 1887 from Brindley Silva. Those are your first place entries that are in consideration for your champion junior breeding Highland heifer. Your champion will receive a traveling trophy sponsored by Greg and Linda Markwell.
Let's give these exhibitors a nice round of applause, if you would, here as we ready to make our selection. And to be honest with you, I didn't know if we'd have 100 of them or 10 of them this morning when I got here, but I think it's been good. We had some very competitive classes, and for whatever reason, the cattle maybe were a little stirred up this morning. I don't know why, but they're starting to settle in now, and I think it's just a really unique lineup of cattle. You know, as you look at these down through here, and you know, this is the kind of hair coat that I think most people would dream of, but trying to manage it and get it appropriately. And by no means am I a fitter. That is not what my role in life is. But they got them managed really well out here, and I think there's some heifer calves. You know, I'm not a big calf user, to be honest with you, but I think these some of these make you think about it because I think there's some quality in them. And then we got into some real depth as we got on back down the line here. And, you know, honestly, I think there's some different ways you can go. I think there's one that's fairly unique, and then after that, you can sure justify doing some different things. But I appreciate these kids bringing the cattle. You know, anytime you can get a banner in Denver, I think you sure need to appreciate it because they don't come easy. It doesn't matter how many were. I know in some of them steer divisions we only had a couple, but hey, a banner's a banner, so they should be proud of bringing them to town. And you know, again, I enjoy judging breeds like this. Maybe you don't see every day, and doesn't mean that they don't have purpose and value, and they sure do. There's a lot of things that can be done with these, and I think are very, very unique setting. I'll be honest with you, I was a little disappointed, no bagpipes this morning, but I guess I can come back in the morning for your open show and I can get my fill of the bagpipes. Maybe they get me a crepe and a Mountain Dew to start the day. So it's a good set of cattle. I appreciate them inviting me out here. Again, my feet kind of hurt. I'm not going to lie to you. I had a long day yesterday. I'm a little congested. I've been on the road for about 3 weeks, so if I seem like I'm a little bit congested, I am, but I sure appreciate the Highland Association inviting me out here. So let's give them a good round of applause. We'll go get you a champion in reserve here in the junior show.
Your grand champion junior breeding heifer comes out of class 105 of senior heifers. That was entry 1884 from Peyton Bear of Reheight, South Dakota. We will now move in our second place entry from that class. That'll be 1881 from Ashland Morelli. Your reserve grand champion junior breeding Highland female is going to come from our second class. That is 1834 from Chloe Wallace of Vandalia, Missouri. Congratulations to our grand and reserve grand champion Highland females. I believe at this time, I'll check with our association. We're going to do pictures at the backdrop, if I'm not mistaken, before we get set up for our showmanship. I'm not being told no, so we're going to take a quick picture break with our judge at the backdrop, give everybody a chance to catch their breath, and then we'll get started with our junior showmanship. We'll start off with class 201 of juniors. Those will be 8 to 12-year-old showmen here within the Highland breed. We appreciate everybody sticking with us. It does look like our pictures are done at the backdrop. And now we're going to get started with our junior showmanship for our Highland show. This is going to be Class 201 junior showman, ages in the range of 8 to 12 years. Within this class, we'll have entries 1888 from Wyatt Powell of Jamal, California. 1889 comes from Jasmine Brown of Pleasanton, Nebraska. 1890 is Spencer Norris of Evergreen, Colorado. 1891 is from Lorelei Brammer of Kiowa, Colorado. 1892 is Keegan Weimer of Cole Harbor, North Dakota. 1893 is from Cannon Hansen of Elizabeth, Colorado. And 1894 is Massey Lunn of Hanover, Pennsylvania. Those are your entries that make up Class 201 of Junior Showman. We only have one class of Junior Showman. So first and second in this class, your judge will be selecting your champion and reserve grand champion, Junior Showman.
Let's give our junior exhibitors here in the showmanship competition a good hand, if you would, please. I think very good job. I know we were pretty brisk pace there through the show, but I thought they've done a nice job getting the cattle to us, and these kids have really battled in here good today. And obviously some of the cattle, like we talked about earlier, maybe not wanting to cooperate quite as well, but as we get out here, I think our champion junior showman is one that just really calm and collected, does a good job getting the feet set, always has the animal on point, and I think really does just a very useful kind of a job. This young lady right here, second in lineup, is going to be our champion junior showman. Congratulations to her.
Your champion junior showman is Jasmine Brown of Pleasanton, Nebraska. Congratulations.
Maybe just a little closer for reserve here. And again, I think maybe some different ways you could go. I wish this heifer would cooperate up here in the front. It's just not maybe wanting to give us quite a good look. So our reserve champion today is another young person I think does just a real solid kind of a job, has the animals set up and kind of knows where I'm at all times. That's the young man right here with this chocolate steer. He's going to be our reserve. Good job to all these kids. Best of luck to them as they move forward.
Your reserve junior showman is going to be Spencer Norris of Evergreen, Colorado. Congratulations to our exhibitors. We'll now work to clean and clear out our ring, and we'll bring up our first heat of intermediate showmen. Our first heat will be Class 202A. They'll have an age range in the intermediate category of 13 to 17 years of age. Now stepping into the ring is going to be our first heat of Class 202. This is Class 202A of Intermediate Showman. Within this class, we'll have entries 1895 from Cameron Carden of Sheridan, Wyoming. 1896 will be Tinley Caskey of Pipestone, Minnesota. 1897 from Macy Anderson of Sawyer, North Dakota. 1898 from Kasha Albert of Guide Rock, Nebraska. 1898 Addison Fitzsimmons of Canyon Creek, Montana. 1900 would be Colby Powell of Jamul, California. 1901 from Brinley Albert of Guide Rock, Nebraska. 1902 Quinn Keller of Crestline, Ohio. 1903 Bella Weimer of Cole Harbor, North Dakota. 1904 from Gabe Shresky of Max, North Dakota. Jillian Lockwood from Hobbs, New Mexico. Easton Silva of Greeley, Colorado. Rinley Silva of Greeley, Colorado. Mason Grimes of Waynetown, Indiana. And Joseph Burton of Cookville, Tennessee. Those are your entries that make up your first heat of intermediate showmanship. Our judge, Dr. Blake Bloomberg, will select his top individuals. He will keep them and hold them back and bring them in for our final drive. It is up to him how many he wishes to bring back. I believe he's going for a total of 5.
Here in our first heat of these intermediates, I think some really good showmen up and down the line, and I did pull these 5 to come back, but there's a couple more that I think are close. They do a really good job. Just comes down to personal preference, and again, in showmanship, to me, I'm not going to ask a lot of questions. No need to turn it into a quiz bowl. Again, you get out here, you just get your animal shown and presented, and showmanship's obviously very subjective as to what you like. I used to be a much better showman than I am now, so I don't really need to be judging a lot of showmanships and giving advice. But, you just try to get them set up as quick as you can. I thought these were just a little quicker to the draw in terms of getting things done. These guys do a good job as well, just maybe a couple little things here or there that you might tweak. So let's give them a nice round of applause. These 5 will hang in the back, and we'll have them come back for our championship.
Congratulations to our entries from our first heat of intermediate showmen in no particular order. Being held back for the grand drive would be Addison Fitzsimmons, Quinn Keller, Jillian Lockwood, Easton, and Renly Silva. Congratulations to those 5 top exhibitors from our first heat. We will work to clean and clear out our ring, then we'll bring up Class 202B of intermediate showmen. Again, this will be our second and final heat of intermediate showmen. Intermediate is classified as 13 to 17 years of age. In our second heat of intermediate showmen, which is Class 202B in the program, we'll have entries from Brianna Brown of Pleasanton, Nebraska, Tate Pape of Pigsgaw, Iowa, Leighton DeMuth of York, Nebraska, Hannah Norris of Evergreen, Colorado, Skylar Cross of Kinderdale, Pennsylvania, Easton Boise of Orleans, Nebraska, Chloe Wallace of Vandalia, Missouri, Cooper Burton of Cookeville, Tennessee, Gracie Dalton of Waddell, Arizona, Breslin DeLong of Fremont, Indiana, Jennison DeLong of Fremont, Indiana, Karis Lunn of Hanover, Pennsylvania, Madison Minear of Cookeville, Tennessee, Nicolette Schmitz of Watkins, Minnesota, and Savannah Farrell of Yarmouth, Massachusetts. That is your complete class of your second heat of intermediate showmen, Class 202B.
Another excellent heat here in our intermediate division, our second and final heat. And again, pulled 5 over that I thought were maybe just a little quicker. We got a couple of them again that are close, and just maybe comes down to a couple subtleties of why they did or did not get the pull. But they're doing a real good job out here. They're battling hard. Let's give them a nice round of applause. They head back. We'll just leave these 5 right here, and we'll get our other 5 to come on in, and we'll get a champion here in the intermediate division.
Congratulations to our intermediate showmanship second heat, Class 202B. The individuals that will be held back for our championship drive in no particular order: Brianna Brown, Leighton DeMuth, Cooper Burton, Gracie Dalton, and Madison Minear. Congratulations to those 5 individuals. They will now go head-to-head with the 5 individuals that came back from Class 202A of intermediate showmen.
Let's give these exhibitors a nice round of applause that made it back out here. Excellent job as far as presentation, and doing a really good job getting their cattle presented out here to a high degree. And I think the cattle are starting to settle in as well. We're not maybe quite as antsy as they were earlier here when we had the show. Hey, you could just basically throw a dart and pick one. I think they're very similar in terms of the way that they do things. You know, I think when you judge the showmanship after the show, you think about, I think it comes back to, and you remember some of these throughout the day from a memorability standpoint of where they were in the show. You know, showmanship, it's not like, I talk about this with my own kids. You don't just turn it on for showmanship. You know, you need to show good at all times. And I thought the majority of these did a really good job this morning in the show, and then are doing an excellent job out here now. So, hey, it's close. You know, again, you can shoot the messenger if you want here, as far as if you don't like the way maybe it shakes out. But there's it's very, very subjective as to what you like and how you want to do things. The one that suits me the best, I think, has done a really nice job all day. Excellent job as far as presence, but yet minimal use of the stick and just letting the animal kind of walk into it and then getting things done in an efficient manner. This young lady next to the end here with this black heifer, she's going to be our champion in this division.
Your champion intermediate showman is Renly Silva of Greeley, Colorado. Congratulations.
Still close. I think, again, you can make a justification to do some different things as you get them out here. Just comes down to what style you like, and maybe, you got some that are maybe a little flashier. You got some that are maybe a little more workmanlike. So just comes down to what you prefer from that kind of a standpoint. But the other one that has kind of caught my eye a couple times here, I think does a really good job just as far as being a little flashier at times, which probably fits to what I like from a showman, maybe just a notch better. This young lady with this kind of cream-colored heifer right here, she's going to be our reserve in this division. Big hand to all these kids. They did a great job. Congratulations to them.
Your reserve champion intermediate showman is Jillian Lockwood. Congratulations to our intermediate showman. Up next would be our final class of showmen. These are senior showmen. They range in the age of 18 to 21. This is class 203 that enters the ring. And this class will have Ty Miller of Woodbine, Iowa, Clara Wallace of Vandalia, Missouri, Stacy Patton of Frederick, Colorado, Ashlyn Morelli of Elverson, Pennsylvania, Tristan Carmack of Pleasuresville, Kentucky, Peyton Bear of Ree Heights, South Dakota, Peyton McCaig of Eudora, Kansas, and Claire Grimes of Waynestown, Indiana. Those are your entries for your senior showmanship. You have a complete class. This is also the only heat of senior showman, so your judge will be choosing your champion or reserve champion senior showman from these individuals in the ring at this time.
Let's put our hands together for these kids that have come back out here in our senior drive. Very capably done, and I don't know where our crowd came from, but we got a pretty good crowd starting to gather in here, and so it's nice for these kids to show off some of their excellence here as you get to this older division. Obviously, a little more seasoned wisdom and come with some of these. They've been in and out of the ring more times than not, and so do a very good job. Just as you look down through here, just a lot of similarities in the way that things are done from a mechanic standpoint. Just comes down to, again, kind of maybe some subtleties as to what I like as you get them out here and compare them to each other. Our champion is one that I think does an excellent job just as far as being calm and smooth, and maybe not the easiest animal to show at times just from the standpoint of standing still, but still I think does a great job in terms of having it on point at all times and still really doing a good job as far as getting things done in a timely manner. Still has that kind of look that you like, that kind of presence that you like. I think does a very, very good job. This young lady right in front of me here is going to be our champion senior showman today. Congratulations to her.
Your champion senior showman is Ashlyn Morelli of Elverson, Pennsylvania.
The other one that I think does a really good job and very similar in terms of type and kind of song, different verse, and just in terms of the way that they do things, really good presence, really good eye appeal. This young lady here with this chocolate heifer is going to be our reserve in this division.
Reserve champion senior showman is Clara Wallace of Vandalia, Missouri. Congratulations to our senior exhibitors. And I believe at this time we will now go on to our Supreme Showmanship category. So we will now take our champions from all of their respective divisions and we'll have them go against each other, and our judge will select our Supreme Showman. From your junior showmanship category, your champion was Jasmine Brown. From your intermediate division, your champion was Renly Silva. And your recently crowned champion from your senior division was Ashlyn Morelli. Your judge, Dr. Blake Bloomberg, will now select who will be reigning Supreme Showman. He will also select the reserve champion Supreme Showman.
I appreciate the Highland Association inviting me out here this morning to work through your junior show here and working with you, your exhibitors and showmanship. Again, it's been a really good group of cattle, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to give you my opinion on them. These three showmen come back out here, and I think all three of them do a really good job. Again, you could pick either one of them, any one of them that you want. The one that suits me the best, though, I think just in terms of getting things done in a timely fashion, getting things done in terms of I thought all day long just getting the cattle exhibited very, very appropriately, and still just the kind of mechanics that you like, along with just the way to do things. This young lady with the red heifer here in the back is going to be our Supreme Champion Showman. Congratulations to her.
Supreme Champion Showman is going to be Ashlyn Morelli. Your reserve champion Supreme Showman is going to come from your intermediate division. That's Renly Silva. Congratulations to our Supreme Showman. We'll now move over into our next class, which will be Class 501. These will be best pair of heifers. Moving about the ring now is Class 501. This is Best Pair of Heifers. We'll have in this class entries 4883 from Kasabi Farm of Prosperity, Pennsylvania, 4884 from Martin Family Ranch of Guffey, Colorado, 4885 will come from Bauer Farms of Bucerus, Kansas, 4886 from Willow Prairie Farms of Fremont, Indiana, and 4887 from Storybrook Farm of Winchester, Tennessee. Your best pair of heifers will receive a banner sponsored by Flatland Farm, LLC. Your results of Class 501 of Best Pair of Heifers, fifth place was 4884 from Martin Family Ranch. Fourth, 4885 from Bauer Farms. Third, 4883 from Kasabi Farm. Second, 4887 from Storybrook Farm. And your class winner and champion of the Best Pair was 4886 from Willow Prairie Farms. Congratulations to our Class 501. We'll now take the time to clean out our ring, and we'll bring up Class 502. These will be Best Pair of Bulls. Stepping into the ring now, as promised, is Class 502. These are Best Pair of Bulls. Within this class, we'll have a total of 3 entries. 4888 from Kasabi Farm of Prosperity, Pennsylvania, 4889 from Schulte Farms of Kearney, Nebraska, and 4890 from Storybrook Farm of Winchester, Tennessee. Your champion Best of Pair Bulls will receive a banner sponsored by Rich and Randy Gene Grunert. We appreciate our sponsors here at our Junior Highland Show. Your results for Class 502 of your best pair of bulls: third place, 4888 from Kasabi Farm. Second, 4890 from Storybrook Farm. And your class winner and champion of your best pair of bulls was 4889 from Schulte Farms. Congratulations to our Class 502. We'll now take the time to move on to Class 503. This will be best three head. This is our last class for today. We'll have entries in this class from Kasabi Farm, from Prosperity, Pennsylvania, and Storybrook Farm of Winchester, Tennessee. Your champion will receive a banner sponsored by Rich and Randy Jean Grunert. We appreciate our sponsors of our Highland shows. Results for Class 503. Second place was 4891 from Kasabi Farm, and your class winner and champion was 4892 from Storybrook Farm of Winchester, Tennessee. Congratulations to all of our junior exhibitors. We are done with our show for today. We will be back tomorrow starting exactly at 8 o'clock with our open show. So again, that does conclude our activities here in the brand new beautiful CoBank Arena here at the Sioux Anschutz Livestock Event Center. We appreciate everybody joining ringside, as well as those watching online at ringsidelive.co. Appreciate y'all. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 o'clock.